Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Today, we're replacing the timing belt on my home-built Lotus Super 7 replica. Oh yeah, if you've never seen one of these cars before, it's a replica of a 1950s to 1960s and early 1970s Lotus. The engine in this car is a Toyota Corolla Twin Cam 4A-GE, found in the mid-80 Corolla GT-S's. Fun little motor to have in a car this light. It is a barrel full of fun. Most engines should have the timing belt replaced about every 100,000 kilometers. This car is not going to see 100,000 kilometers anytime soon. I've had it 14 years. I've driven it quite a bit. I've got maybe 20 to 30,000 kilometers on the odometer, but I'm still looking at 14 years of it sitting. Anyways, pulling this apart is pretty easy. I drain the coolant, otherwise it's going to be a big mess. And then everything's fairly accessible. I do use kind of a cheater to get the front crank bolt undone just because I can't easily squeeze an impact in there. But you really should be replacing all the belts when you're doing this anyways. Now, some engines are an interference fit. That means if the cam stops rotating because the timing belt broke, the pistons are just going to carry on their merry little way, not knowing that all the valves have come to a stop. And the pistons will close the valves for you, which gets expensive. The 4A-GE is not an interference engine, so if the belt breaks, the pistons just eventually come to a stop because the valves aren't doing their thing anymore. So it's pretty easy. While we're in here, we're going to change the water pump. Some mechanics will recommend changing the water pump at the same time as the timing belt, and that's good practice. I've had it bite me when I've kind of looked at the water pump and go, nah, it looks good, man. It feels great. It's groovy. It's totally going to be okay. And then, like, within a year, it's leaking, and I'm like, oh, crap. And I got to get in there again, and it's not fun to do. So you're there. It's not that expensive, and just do it. Get it done. So I got a new water pump. Also was looking for an oil leak, but I think it's just the valve covers dribbling their way down to the bottom. I did take the dipstick tube out and resealed it because it looked a little not totally solid. I didn't have the right size O-ring, so I just gooped it with some old Permatex Ultra Black. Handy tip. You should always put some kind of an antifreeze mixture in your motor, even if it's never going to see winter or even if it's never going to freeze. Antifreeze has a couple things to help you out. One is it stops corrosion. It also stops galvanic corrosion. So it's not going to rust inside if it's an iron block motor, but it's also not going to be turning itself into a battery and dissolving the softest metals because everything's going acidic inside. Oh, hey, when you put the belt on, you need to make sure that you get everything lined up perfectly. Previously in the text I mentioned, you got to make sure the cam sprockets are lined up with their marks. You also got to make sure the crankshaft sprocket is lined up with its mark. If everything is all pointing to what it should be, you put the belt on and everything's hunky-dory. If you screw up, if you're off by even a tooth, in this motor, you're going to kill off what little power this engine actually has. In other motors, you might start bending valves, so you kind of got to get her just bang on. One thing I like to do on most of my motors is mark the top dead center on the crank pulley with some white paint. And I usually mark the timing marks on the cover as well, just so I can find them quickly and easily with a timing light. With the front bolt in, you can turn the motor around 2 full turns just to make sure nothing's going to hit, the valves aren't being closed by the pistons, and you make sure you got tension on the drive side of the belt. Then you can tighten up the tensioner and start putting the rest of the covers on. Some of the boy racers like to have the top cover off so you can show off the cam sprockets. I don't really care, so I'm going to keep the cover on, which keeps all the rocks and birds and small children and inquisitive fingers out of those tooth sprockets, and it makes me feel happier. To fill the coolant back up, the radiator is at such an angle, and the filler neck for the rad is positioned odd, and so the radiator doesn't actually fill up through the rad cap. I do have a spigot that I put on the back of the head, and I'm going to siphon everything out of the bucket into the engine through this spigot on the back of the cylinder head. When it all starts coming out the radiator cap, I'll put the cap on, then continue to siphon the coolant until the coolant comes out of the spigot, and then heat it up, get the engine running, and when it cools down and all the hot coolant contracts, it'll draw coolant back into the cooling system through the vacuum when it contracts, and it works pretty good. I have used compressed air to try and inflate the overflow bottle and get coolant back in, but a smart cookie would put a rad cap in the upper rad hose. That would be smart. Anyways, nose cone back on, and then it's just about ready to go rock and roll. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks for watching. It's always great showing the stuff off that I do. Woohoo!